What's up, everybody? Thanks so much for clicking on the podcast. We are glad that you've joined us for the movies that make you. We are excited for this episode. Jacob and I went a few months ago to a special viewing of Tenet in 70 millimeter as a re-release project. I talk a little bit about it in the podcast, but since we got to see it in the theater, I thought it'd be fun to just discuss it with Jacob. It is more of a thinking film, and I think it's complicated as you'll hear, but it was a lot of fun to go check it out. And then we actually had him rewatch it since it'd been such a long time since we'd seen it, because it is such a complicated movie. But we have a really good discussion that we hope that you'll enjoy. Don't forget to check us out on Instagram at The Movies That Make You, and also you can find us on Letterboxd at I Am Sprang. And we'd love it if you just give us a like and follow on all of our podcast channels. We're on YouTube. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, everywhere podcasts are sold. They're free, but anyway. We hope you give us a follow, give us a like, give us a subscribe, and would love it if you'd share us with your friends, share us with your feed. If you find something that you like, get us out there. We'd love to have more people be able to enjoy these conversations. As a parent, having conversations with our kids about film and how these films can inform us about life and all that stuff. So without further ado, let's get to the podcast. All right, guys, we are back with another episode of The Movies That Make You. And this one is definitely going to be the movies that make you think, because this is a thinking film. I am Sprang, and I am the dad, and I'm joined by...
Me, Jacob. I'm 13.
Nice. And the movie that we're going to be talking about today is Tenet. Tenet is a Christopher Nolan film that came out in 2021. It is a very much time kind of tossing around movie. What would you say, just overall, what would you say this movie is kind of about?
It's just like the concept of reverse, and like just how reverse time and normal time kind of like interact with each other, and how they're like connected, because and like in the film they'll like go into like the thing which puts them in the reverse time, and then you can see them going in the reverse time at the same time. So it's like really trippy and weird.
Yeah, absolutely. Just got a little bit of backstory on this one. This one was a Christopher Nolan film. He had a long-standing relationship with Warner Brothers Pictures, and most of his movies had been done with Warner Brothers all the way back to Batman Begins, Prestige. All of those films were all Warner Brothers. So he came out with this film, and it was still in the wake of COVID 2020, when movie theaters weren't really necessarily open. They didn't have as many people going to the theaters and all that stuff, and so there was a lot of issues with the fact that these movie companies didn't think that people would really be going to the theater very much, and so they all kind of started doing streaming options, and they do same day streaming. And so Warner Brothers had announced that they would be doing day and day releases of their movies in the theater and on HBO Max. And Christopher Nolan didn't like that. Christopher Nolan is known for being a film buff, and he loves making films for the theater. He wants to give them a big experience. That's why he loves IMAX, because IMAX gives you an experience you can't replicate in your home. And so he actually cut ties with Warner Brothers after that decision. And his next movie he did was Oppenheimer, which came out last year. Did it with Paramount, won Best Picture, all this stuff, all these awards. And so now what's interesting is this re-release of Tenet that we went to, which was, we'll talk a little bit about, but this re-release of Tenet is somewhat of a like a concession or some sort of way of wooing Christopher Nolan back to Warner Brothers, because Warner Brothers re-released it in theaters for special viewing a couple weeks before Dune came out, Dune Part 2, as a way of kind of beefing up IMAX film. And they released it in a 70 millimeter version, which is like a super widescreen version. So instead of it being IMAX, which is 4 stories tall, or the ones that you see in theaters now, it's a little bit taller, more of a boxy showing view. the 70 millimeter is like super widescreen, and so it was really really cool for me to see it in that. I'd only seen it in at the house. Chris and I watched it early when it came out on HBO Max. But when I saw this, I thought Jacob would like to see it. I thought he would enjoy it, and so we went and saw it. So what would you say? What did you think about the film? Not plot points, but what did you think about going and seeing it in the theater?
I thought it was like a really well put together film, and yeah, I liked the music aspect, the score. I thought that was really well themed for the movie, and like all the different like events or big climax points were just textured with a really well put together song.
Yeah. That's a really good point. A lot of the times, the composer he has for his films had been Hans Zimmer. He did all the Batman films. At this point, though, the composer for this film was Ludwig Göransson, which we would recognize from the Mandalorian's score. So he was a composer also for Mandalorian. So it's got a lot of that kind of Hans Zimmer energy, like the big bombastic sounds and the drums and rhythms have a big thing in his deals. But Zimmer had already declined because he had commitments to do Dune, and so he couldn't do this one. And so that's when Ludwig came in. So one other pop culture reference I wanted to mention is that recently there was a meme going or a clip going around where a Peloton. You heard this story? A Peloton instructor.
No.
Okay, so Christopher Nolan is on his Peloton bike, being coached by the Peloton lady, like trainer.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay, and then she goes into this um, the most pointless movies of all time, Tenet. Why would I wish I could get that hour and a half back or whatever? So Christopher Nolan is sitting there listening, trying to train, listening to the trainer talk trash about his film. So I just thought that was pretty funny. I might try to find a clip and share it from our Instagram. But yeah, so it's one of those things. It is definitely it takes a lot of capacity to try to understand what's going on. And I even watching it the second time and being a 40 almost 44-year-old man, like the first 15-20 minutes I'm still like wrestling with what's going on and what they're trying to tell me because it's so um intense. One of the other things I would say is a criticism of the film when it first came out and even listening to it this time is sometimes the voices are hard to hear. It sounded kind of muddied, like their voices, so I couldn't really hear the dialogue super clear. But I don't know if that was a decision that they made or what. Um, but that was a criticism I remember coming out. So let's kind of jump into the film. What's the point of the movie?
So the first scene is there's a big shootout at like an orchestra, and there are these guys that come in and they're trying to like place bombs throughout the thing, try to make like a big move. And one of the guys that was trying to work against the bombs, he got captured and he took a, a fake suicide pill, and so he had to be like announced as dead, and then they put him through like a I don't know, like a place wherever he would like find a new identity or whatever.
Yeah, so
And
he's
then
like basically he had a suicide pill. He took it so that he could, because he got captured, so he wouldn't give away bad information. But it was somewhat, it seems like, now he's dead by the authorities, but he's now able to operate with this kind of black ops organization.
yeah.
So what happened? What happens then? What does he learn about life? About Tenet? What does Tenet mean?
He there's like this signal or hand thing that he does Tenet, and it gets him like connections to people that he needs to work with in order to find out more about this phenomenon of reverse.
Yeah, they learn that there's some sort of um, person from the future that is sending back um, weapons into the present, something like that, right? And
Hmm.
so they're trying to stop this person. They think they know who it is, but they need this guy to come in and kind of help them kind of track it down. So it's kind of a detective story. But one of the key things is that they have weapons and bullets that are from reverse time
Yeah.
versus forward time, and you have to shoot them differently, right?
Hmm.
So how does that work?
So the bullet is already been like in the wall, and you have the gun in your hand, and like I guess you like shoot it normally, and then the bullet comes back into the gun, and it's all the same speed, all the same force, but like it's a totally different injury if you get hit.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think I remember, there was a there was a scene that kind of really makes it clear, and it's one of the first times we see the transport. Basically, you walk into, like Jacob said before, you walk into this device. It basically puts you in reverse time, and so then you can move um, in reverse time. But to you, it's normal. But the crazy thing was that he walked into a room, and they're like, the other character was Robert Pattinson, which, for those of you that, I know we've talked about him maybe before, but Robert Pattinson made his name being in the Twilight films, but previously to that he had been in one of the Harry Potter films, and and he'd been in a lot of other good films too. This was kind of like the fact that Christopher Nolan put him in this film means Christopher Nolan thinks he's a good actor, so that's a pretty big deal for Robert Pattinson, for the fans of films, to kind of see, okay, this guy, maybe I should pay attention because he's in a Chris Nolan film. I thought he did a great job throughout the film of being that kind of sidekick character. He gets brought in with this guy. They do some really cool stunts, but that one scene, kind of in particular, they walk in and they see like all these gun blasts, and the Robert Pattinson character goes, "What happened here?" And David J. Washington says, "It hasn't happened yet." And so it's just like, oh my goodness, like that was kind of, for me, that was the turning point to realize, like, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. But kind of as a foreshadowing to that, in the opening scene, when one of the guys gets shot, he sees the bullet in the wood that came back out, and so it's kind of like a foreshadowing of what's to come. But he didn't know, and we as the audience didn't know what was going on. So one of the first missions they have to do is they have to get up to the very, very top of a hotel or something to meet with this one person who is basically the person they think is going to be able to help them figure out who's smuggling these weapons. What did you think about that stunt? It was pretty crazy, right?
Yeah, it was the bungee jump one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that was crazy. They get on, and then they go all like GoldenEye style, 007, uh, Splinter Cell, whatever. They sneak around, knock out all these dudes, and then they get to the main guy who really isn't the guns arms dealer, and then they find out that the woman is the arms dealer and she has all the info. So they get it all out, or not all of it out, but they get most of it out, and they find out that there's uh, a woman and a guy that are seemingly married, but their relationship isn't really working out.
Yeah, and the main villain is one of the best actors of all time, Kenneth Branagh. You've known him from a lot of Shakespeare films, was what he kind of made his fame on, but also more recently he is the French detective in the Merchant of Venice, or no, not Merchant of Venice, Haunting in Venice was the most recent one, but the Death on the Murder on the Orient Express, Death on the Nile. So Harold Poirot, he plays that character more recently. But this was, I think, his first time working with Chris Nolan, and then Chris Nolan also cast him. No, it wasn't the first time. This was the second time. So he also cast him in Dunkirk as one of the generals in that. So Elizabeth Debicki plays Kat. So they're in a relationship, but their relationship is struggling. She remembers seeing somebody jumping out of a boat when she was trying to talk to him. Their relationship has been on the rocks ever since, so she thinks he's cheating on her. But come to find out, like they have, he has David J. Washington's character, the protagonist, has to try and figure out how to get in with her, try to save her, try to protect her, to try to help take him down because he's the guy that's the villain. He's the one running all these weapons. He's the one that's trying to end the world, basically.
Hmm.
So, what did you think of those characters?
Um, I thought that they really acted out that like relationship part, because like you could see all the emotion in the guy, and then while she's like acting all scared, and it's not really cool to see, but um they really acted it out well, and it made me like believe that there was really a problem going on there.
And I think that David J. Washington's character, like I think David J. Washington they did a really good job as well, like with his relationship with her, because I really felt
Hmm.
like he he did care for
Yeah,
this person, and he wanted to protect her, wanted to save her, and it wasn't anything beyond just care and concern. I never felt like it went into like relationship stuff. It was just like he sees a woman that's in trouble, and she's being bullied by a guy, and he wants to try and protect her, and at the same time take him down. Um,
hmm,
so what kind of happened next? I know that there's a lot of you've watched it just recently.
yeah,
What happens kind of after they get introduced, and um, basically he's trying to help fill her in on what he's trying to do, and try to get her to be a part of the team of taking him down.
yeah. So they have like a lunch together, and then he kind of like gets introduced. He gets introduced to the bad guy, and they just kind of start talking. And it seems like there's a little bit of a connection there. Like they kind of like not really are like friends, but they're like getting to know each other. And so they go out on like a boat thing. She unclips him from the boat, which like
Mm.
tries to kill him, and the good guy has to go in and go save him,
Yeah, because
which yeah, which probably builds more of a connection to like say, "Hey, I trust you. Do you trust me?" like type of thing.
he can't let him die because he still has to figure out how to
Yeah.
stop the guns and weapons from being transported. So he can't have him be killed just yet. Um, So one of the key moments in the film, as we kind of get further in, is they have to they basically build this plan that they're gonna need to go back in time, a lot, like months, right,
Mhm.
and try and get back to a point in time where they can plant something so that they can have it for the future person to be able to do something to take them out. And it's crazy to think. So they kind of get into the machine, and then he leaves, and it's kind of crazy because when you're driving in normal, but it looks like you're driving backwards when you're in
Yeah.
forward time. And I mean, all of the stunts and the choreography, the fight choreography, all of the pieces of that. I actually just recently saw a clip where Chris Nolan was talking with Denis Villeneuve, who was the director of Dune, about that film in particular, and how um, they they had to do the choreography real. He didn't want to reverse anything. He wanted it to look real, like that was really happening. So they had to learn the choreography, and they had to shoot it forwards, and then they had to shoot it the backwards choreography.
Mhm.
So it's insane. But yeah, they go back in time. They realize that's what happened. They figured out they okay. Here's the point that we could make a switch. This is where we can
Mhm.
save her. This is where we can pull her out. But they had to go back to a scene that was previously in the film, and they found out that at the point earlier in the film when we saw them fighting these other people, they were actually fighting
Yeah, they're
their future past selves. I don't know.
yeah. It was complicated. So I saw this one thing where they enter the two guys they enter out at the same time, which is really cool because in the whenever you see like uh the main guy going through it and he's fighting himself, he goes into the machine and then he comes out in normal time. But from the other point of view, from when we first saw the scene, it looks like there's two guys coming out and one of them's reversed and the other one's not. But really, it's the same guy.
Yeah, yeah, really
It's just
crazy.
super complicated. It's fun.
Yeah, it's fun to think, and it's fun to see, and fun to like go down that rabbit hole of like what would this look like. And I mean, he's a Christopher Nolan loves to make thinking films. He's not
Hmm.
he likes to he does the big set pieces and the big blockbuster moments, but it's all in purpose of serving something greater and something
Hmm.
more. There's something always deeper going on. One of his other films, Interstellar, he does a time thing there where there's a planet that has that moves faster. So when you're on that planet, the world everywhere else in the universe is moving faster, and you're not. So the world moves 30, 40 years in the future, and they come back to the spaceship and they haven't aged at all. So it's like this really crazy,
Yeah.
crazy thing. So he likes to dive into time and do that stuff. Um, so I mean, I guess the main kind of what ends up being the big kind of oh the big ending, which was just nuts, is they have a team that's in the future going backwards,
Yeah.
and they have a team that's going from the past to the future, all at the same time, all centered around this one moment where they're going to blow up something
Yeah.
to like stop the guy from moving forward. And there's lots of stuff that happens. Tell us a little bit about what it was like to watch that scene.
So I have to admit I was getting a little sleepy during that part, so I blacked out a little bit. But there was,
Well,
yeah, I remember the thing wherever like it got blown up and then it would like reform and then it would blow up again, but in like a different area. I don't know. It was so weird.
yeah, and
But
so that the red team and then the blue team, um, they were working to. They had this one mission to do this, and then they had another mission, and then the main character and his crew they like had a other secret mission that
mhm,
they're trying to accomplish. But one they get to one point where he's about to get killed, and then this other guy comes in from the past, like is in reverse and stops him. But then and that ends up being what we find out is that ends up being Neil, which is Robert Pattinson's character, and then um, he had come back to save him, um, but then when he sees him in the future, before he's gone backwards, he can't tell him what he's about to do is going to get him killed, but he has to
mm,
tell him like he just has to wish him luck because he's in the future going in the back going
yeah,
past. So it's just this crazy moment where it's just like um, where he knows what that guy's going to do. But if he tells him that I mean, who knows what would happen, right?
yeah,
It's just really crazy. But I mean, the spectacle of that whole final sequence is just
hmm,
nuts. Like you said, the reverse bombs, the fighting, the all that stuff. But just the mind and capacity to come up with the idea is just ridiculous, right?
hmm,
So, what would you say is so then at the very end of the film, he basically tells the lady, um, the girl, like, hey, if you ever sense anything, ever feel out of place, or you feel like something's going on, I need you to call this number, leave a voicemail, tell me tell where you are, what the time is, all that
hmm,
stuff, and then that's all you got to do. And so it ends up happening where the lady that he met in the hotel, who
yeah,
was the arms dealer, um, is sitting outside watching her, and then she calls the voicemail, and then all of a sudden he's in the back of her car, um, stopping like basically and killing the arms lady
yeah,
because of the he's still like basically trying to protect this girl
yeah,
that he got into this
hmm,
thing. But I really felt like the film could have like this. I feel like this whole world of this Tenet is like so sequel worthy. Like it would be so
definitely.
cool to see kind of what
Yeah,
goes on.
it was just crazy. And then like maybe not even with the same characters, but just with because the plutonium bits of the bomb, they all get separated. So maybe if like someone digs him up and finds him and becomes another villain, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a crazy film. Um, so what would you rate it out of 5 stars?
4.5, probably 4.5, or yeah, 4.5.
Yeah, I would rate it around there too. I feel like I've actually got it rated 4.5 on Letterboxd. I think I think one of the reasons why it's not necessarily uh, been as beloved as the others is that it's so complicated.
Hmm.
So for those of you that might not be totally like into like trying to figure the whole film out or being confused half the time, that's kind of fun for me. But
Yeah.
but it's definitely worth a watch. And I hope you have watched it after listening to this because we spoiled everything. So cool. Any other thoughts about the film?
um, I really feel like they could have made it a little longer, just to like help explain a few things. But that's my
Yeah, maybe at
thought.
the beginning, if
Yeah.
it was a little bit more because they really throw you in. to that kind of
Yeah, just
reverse time
settle.
stuff, and they're just
Mm-hmm.
trying to explain it in one scene, and it's in like he's meeting with a lady working on the reverse bullet,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like that was supposed to explain everything, but um, I mean it's a master class in how to weave these stories in, and so um, real quick, if you haven't seen it, it's a rated R movie, Christopher Nolan's first movie out the gate, which is called Memento. In that film, it's also about time. In that film, um, the uh, there's black and white scenes, and then there's color scenes. In the black and white scenes, those are moving forward in time. The color scenes are moving backward in time, and then there's flashbacks even within those scenes that are going to an earlier time outside of the time of the movie. So, but it does a really good job. It's a little bit more approachable. But if you like Christopher Nolan, if you haven't seen that movie, definitely recommend seeing that for you parents out there, because it's a really really good. It kind of shows you how Chris Nolan's mind thinks and how his storytelling is trying to take these super high, complicated concepts and place them into um, big blockbuster films.
Yeah.
So definitely worth checking out. Like I said, Interstellar also has the time aspect. I think time is just one of those things that's really interesting to explore.
Mm-hmm.
And with things like even like Endgame, where the Avengers are having to figure out how do I go back
Yeah.
in time, and
Yeah.
the way they kind of break down the whole Back to the Future, like no, that's not how it works. All that stuff. It's interesting to kind of that we're kind of trying to explore what that means. But definitely worth a watch. So 4.5, I'd give it 4.5. I think we're in agreement there. And thank you, Jacob, for joining me for the movie.
No problem, guys. See ya.
Bye, y'all. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. We hope you enjoyed that conversation Jacob and I just had around Tenet. What a fun conversation to have, and it's fun to introduce my sons to these movies that are a little bit more heady, a little bit more thought-provoking, and it's just fun to be able to enjoy some of these films with them and introduce them to films that are more mature in kind of the content and just the thought process. So very cool. Next week, we'll be posting our episode on Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. And the following week, we'll be posting our review of Godzilla X Kong. And then the following week after that, we'll be posting a very special episode on Star Wars because of the re-release of Episode 1, Phantom Menace, the 25th anniversary. So be on the lookout for those. And again, love if you like, subscribe, share, all that stuff would help us just kind of get the word out on the movies that make you. And be sure to check us out on Letterboxd, where you can see all of our lists of the movies that make you cry, the movies that make you laugh, the movies that make you think, like this one. And then also you can follow us on Instagram at Movies That Make You. Until next time, keep watching movies.